Welcome in, everybody. A Football Friday. Johnny Mac officially 1 week away from the Philadelphia Eagles season opener. I'm going to welcome everybody in this morning and thank BetUS for sponsoring this edition of Football 24/7. Johnny Mac, just a week to go, man. A week to go until this team kicks off in Sao Paulo, Brazil, and they don't seem too happy about that one. But we are a week out.
How you doing? It was a big Friday, Brazil day, man.
Yeah.
Dude, don't do's, as AJ described it. A bunch of don't do's.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody's too excited about that trip.
Yeah, no, it doesn't seem like it. How you doing on this Friday there, Johnny Mac? Pretty good?
Yeah. Week away. Wish it were in Philadelphia where it should be, but we'll get over it. Get to week 2, hopefully.
Yeah, we'll get there just a week out. We made it this far through the offseason. I want to welcome and thank everybody for being here this morning. Don't forget to smash that like button on your way in. Big crowd already in here this morning. The fans are fired up, Johnny Mac. The listeners of Birds 365 are fired up. I can feel it in the chat. We got a good show planned for you guys today. We got Ed Kratz in hour number 2. We'll have some commentary on the Eagles' newest addition at defensive tackle. They waived a player that made the 53-man roster. We'll talk about that. And Jalen Hurts had some interesting comments on Jason Kelce and his progression being halted. So we'll get into those comments.
On the Eagles Radiothon, which is supposed to be a big cheerleading effort.
Yeah, right. So we will talk about that. That'll be a conversation for a little bit later on here in hour number 1. Johnny Mac, let's start with the roster news here. They picked up Byron Young, defensive tackle, and that means Marlon Tuipulotu is on the outs. What you make of that move and just your thoughts on it overall?
Yeah, what's interesting, we were talking to Alec Hallaby, the assistant GM, before practice yesterday, and I asked him about the waiver wire and how you manipulate it, and it really is a lot of uncertainty. I'm going to be writing about that a little bit later, but I think we all think the Eagles got a big feel for what other teams are going to do. It's kind of like, they have the manpower to do far more research. You try to understand teams and where they are in their roster building philosophy and where they're strong and where they're weak. And I thought it was interesting because this is a perfect example. The Eagles claimed, for those who don't know, Byron Young, defensive tackle from Alabama, seemingly a pretty deep position, but they're always looking to add talent.
Yeah,
was the 70th overall pick in the 2022 draft. So that was the Eagles took his teammate Tyler Steen at 65, Sidney Brown at 66, and Byron went 70th. So he's right in that mix. And they waived Marlon Tuipulotu to make room. So they had their 3 backups: Moro Jomo, Thomas Booker. I think everyone saw flashed in the preseason. Marlon Tuipulotu. Now the hope is he gets through waivers and you're able to bring him back to the practice squad. But again, that's always a bit of a gamble, especially when you're out there now after that first wave when hundreds and hundreds of players you got to call through. Now it's not that, it's a player a day. That's sort of what happened with Byron Young.
Right. We picked him up off waivers.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because the Raiders had to make space because they claimed some people in the original cut down, and all of a sudden the Eagles plucked Byron Young. So it's going to be interesting if they can get Marlon back. We'll know that later this afternoon. He might want a fresh start. Again, I always say it's a two-way street when it comes to guys signing with the practice squad. So we'll see if he's back or not. But interesting from the perspective of the fit. You don't have an obvious backup to Jordan Davis. I'm not sure you did. I'm not sure you did with Marlon, but Marlon was more equipped.
He was closer to the mold. Yeah.
Yeah. Again, you're just looking to persevere when you're talking about losing players to injury. So you're not going to replace Jordan Davis, but you need a big body to play the way Vic Fangio wants to play with those variable fronts, the 50 fronts that we've discussed, the
Yeah,
40
so if Jordan
fronts.
Davis goes down and they don't have Marlon, that could effectively be removed from their defense, right?
Exactly. You're not going to play it that much.
Right.
And Vic can say he could persevere with, and he mentioned Milton Williams earlier this summer. I'm like, Milton, you're doing him a disservice if you're playing him at nose tackle, number one.
Right.
Of course he can line up there. We've been through this. Javon Hargrave did it in Jonathan Gannon's first year. It wasn't great, until they were able to get those big nose tackles. In the case, it was Jordan as a rookie and later Linval Joseph. Until they were able to get that player, a lot of people didn't even know they were playing Vic Fangio's defense because they could barely go to that 50 front. Also, they didn't have Hassan Reddick at the time, so that was a big issue. They didn't have the overhang player they wanted. They had to play Gennard Avery. But every once in a while, you would see Avery out there, and you would see Javon Hargrave playing nose tackle, and you saw Vic's defense. But they played way more 40 fronts than they wanted to play, and they struggled with the run more than they wanted to because they didn't have that player. And again, the presence is just a little bit different. And so from that perspective, you got a bunch of 3 techniques, a bunch of 4-eye, a bunch of 5 guys, and that's Morrow backing up,
right,
Alan Carter and Milton Williams, and that's Thomas Booker backing those guys up. And I said, well, that means you should keep Marlon. But from the Eagles' perspective, they're betting on he gets through waivers, and we'll see if they're right or not.
Yeah, when will we find out if he gets through waivers? Is that's a one-day thing, right? We should find out today.
This afternoon at 4 o'clock, the waivers will expire, and I assume he'll be back if he clears waivers. Maybe the Raiders need a defensive tackle.
Yeah, right. John, so obviously a little bit of those concerns with losing Marlon, not that Marlon was like this big impact player, but just makes a lot of sense of what you said with, you got to persevere was your word there. And without him, you got to imagine the 50 front might be gone. Moving into a new, what do you think of Byron Young? Do you know anything about the player, John? The first thing I think is, and I remember him a little bit from when I was watching Alabama, I think 2022 third rounder, and he's already gone. Is that a red flag after 1 year that they release him? Maybe it's just a numbers game. Maybe they just didn't turn out what they wanted him to be. What do you know about the player, and what do you think about that?
Well, it's a lot. We talked about this a little bit with Jahan Dotson as well.
Right. Yeah.
Already a different regime. So the guys there now, Tom Telesco and Antonio Pierce, Antonio was there, but he wasn't the head coach. Tom Telesco wasn't the GM. They didn't draft him. So there's not that. I guarantee if Dave Ziegler was still there, he'd still be there. But that's sort of how it works. He's not tethered to him. So when Pierce became the head coach, became the interim head coach in for Josh McDaniels, he didn't play. He played 6 games, and then Pierce got the job, and he sat. So obviously he didn't like him that much as well, and those guys didn't feel tethered to him. So I think that explains why they gave up on him so quickly. Just a change in regime, and anytime you do that, you're not beholden to the thought process that maybe you are to your own draft picks. But obviously he's got talent as a 3rd round pick and a pretty significant top of the round 3rd round pick. Alabama guy, as you know, and he's a little bit undersized. So I did see Fran Duffy at the time tweeting about it, and when he came out, thought he was a rotational player, could play a little bit inside, a little bit outside. And when I say that with the interior, talking about nose, he maybe can do it for a few snaps here and there versus the 3 technique, the 4-eye. That's more likely where he'd be suited to play. But how we talked about the incremental addition, you're always looking to get a little bit better, and they feel this kid's got talent to be a little bit better. And they're taking a swing. Obviously, they liked him in the draft. We haven't gotten to talk to him yet about him, but they wouldn't be picking him up for his, he played 6 games as a rookie and he had 4 tackles. So obviously, this is a projection.
Right. He didn't have a big role or anything. Yeah.
No, dating back to when he was coming out of college.
So, John, if Marlon Tuipulotu, and we're not saying he's the same player, but somewhat comparable, if he's comparable to Jordan Davis, would it be fair to say Byron is somewhat comparable in terms of style of player to Jalen Carter, or no?
Well, yeah, I want to
not talent. I'm not saying talent. I'm not talent.
Yes, similar.
He would come in to replace Jalen Carter at times. Yeah,
he's a similar type of player. He would. Again, it's about the position you play, and Jalen plays 3 technique. He plays 4-eye. He plays 5 occasionally in this defense. He'll even bounce outside. This guy's not bouncing outside.
Right.
Jalen's tremendously talented. He's not going to play much nose tackle. Could he? Of course, he's that gifted. But you don't want to put him out of position. This guy's more of a 3 technique, a 4-eye, a 5 technique. So is Jalen Carter. So is Milton Williams. So is Moro Ojomo. So is Thomas Booker. So you got a bunch of those guys, and you got old Jordan Davis that everybody thinks is a bust. He's one of the most important players on this team. I don't think many people understand that still to this day. They don't have anybody else who can, again, replicate what he does from a presence perspective. And they've been looking for it with the PJ Mustafers of the world, the Noah Ellises of the world, over the past couple of years. When they did bring in Linval Joseph, they tried Marvin Wilson, and that didn't work, which is the reason they went outside the organization. And if Jordan Davis gets hurt like he did when they went out to get Linval Joseph, the Eagles might have to make a move if they want to keep playing the style. If they want to keep playing the style that Vic wants to play, and that's those variable fronts.
Yeah, so we'll see what they end up doing here. I want to welcome and thank everybody for being here this morning, everybody. 7 days out. A lot of people joining the show, so for those who missed the beginning, we will just run that back really quick before we get to our first commercial break. Good morning, Cody K. Quan Pugh, what's up, my man Quan? Good to see you, brother. Jason 18, Daz is in here. Rashid Mixon, our man Prince is in here. Iceberg, Joe Ho, Eduardo Reza, Cali Baby, Stephen Patton, Donald Roan. Anybody I missed, I didn't mean to miss you, but I appreciate you being here. Yale Roth, what's up, brother? Good to have everybody in here. John, I want to clarify because maybe people just got in here. Mr. International, what's up, my man? Appreciate you being here. This is incorrect, this comment, and I just want to clarify it so people know exactly what this player is. Daz says, so basically we got him for backup in case JD goes down. Daz, not really. John pointed out he doesn't really play that style where he would be able to replicate what JD, not that anybody would, but if you want to go to the 50 front, as John just pointed out, it's going to be tough to do with a guy like Byron losing Marlon. That's right, John, right?
Yeah, I mean, he weighs 292 pounds.
Yeah, Jordan Davis is what, 330, 340?
Yeah, he lost some weight, but he's 335, 340, somewhere in that range. Yeah, I mean, you got to be a big guy to play nose tackle in the NFL. Right. And you got to be, more important than big, you got to be strong. You got to be very strong, very powerful. And Jordan Davis is. This is an undersized defensive tackle. And the mold similar to Moro Ojomo. Even Moro would be more undersized. And there's plenty of those guys. And you know, the best backup is similar to when you talk about the center conversation. Well, you know, maybe the best center on the Philadelphia Eagles, and they have a really good one, I think, in Cam Jurgens. Maybe the best center that was Landon Dickerson, to be honest.
Yeah.
Um, maybe the Eagles' best nose tackle, because he's just so gifted, is Jalen Carter, because he could do anything. But they don't want to play him there, obviously. It's a waste of his talents.
Yeah, nah, he
Um,
needs it. He needs to. Yeah, that's not where they're going to put Jalen Carter.
no, but it's a complete. But that he's so gifted, like he could play anywhere, including nose tackle. Um, their backup guys, they don't project well at nose tackle, just from a size and strength
Right.
perspective. Um, so but they've been looking. It's not easy to find those guys. It's not easy to find big
Who's the
men.
30-year-old Linval Joseph that's out there, John? Is there
Well,
one
yeah,
right now?
who the Cowboys signed Lynn Paul, right?
Yeah, well, I didn't want Linval because I think he's probably. I mean, what's he,
He's a
35 or
little
30?
bit, yeah. He's
Yeah,
he's getting up there, but
yeah.
he was great in his day, though.
I thought he was good when he came into Philly. I mean, he obviously didn't have as big of a role as he did in his heyday, but I thought
Yeah, he
I thought he
helped a
served
lot.
it. He
He helped a
certainly
lot,
did.
but
Yeah.
I wish people could have gotten to see him when he was like Jason Kelsey would tell me, the strongest player in the NFL. That was Lynn Ball Joseph in his
Right.
prime. He's 35 now, and he might still be in the top 5 or 10. Um, he was a power lifter. I remember, he bench pressed ridiculous numbers, squatted ridiculous numbers. He was just, he would push people around. But and that's early in his career when he was with the Giants and then the Vikings. He's a Pro Bowl player as a nose tackle, which is really difficult to get noticed because you're not getting sacks and things like that. But he had such an impact on the game. And I always said that's what the Eagles want Jordan Davis to become. He's not that yet. But what they want him to become, what Linval Joseph was in his prime, or Haloti Nada, who was the guy I always use because he was even more so because he was like the 12th pick in the draft. And I'm not talking Haloti Nada at the end of his career here. I'm talking Haloti Nada in Baltimore, when he was just a dominant player. That's what they want Jordan Davis to
Yeah,
become.
right. I think Jordan can become that. I think this is going to be a big year for Jordan Davis. I am not one of the people who is out on Jordan. I see the potential based on and also you've helped me understand his role a lot more and through our offseason. For those who weren't here in the offseason, Johnny Mack gave unbelievable master classes on just how Vic's defense works and what the role of each player is. So I would encourage everybody to go back and watch them before the season starts so you understand kind of what Vic is running. But definitely excited. I think Jordan Davis going to have a big year ahead of him. Johnny Mac, one more thing I want to talk about before we get to our first commercial break. I'm going to keep the Jalen comment and the Sao Paulo comments and some of that stuff for after the break. But James Bradbury, John, it came down pretty quickly after our show ended yesterday. He's out 6 to 8 weeks. I won't lead you down one way or another on where I'm at on it. What was your takeaway from James Bradbury being out 6 to 8 weeks?
Well, I get the conspiracy theories. I don't
John,
know.
it's tough to not go
I
conspiracy,
know.
right?
I mean, that's where that I get it. I get it. But I don't know how it helps the Eagles at all. I don't know how it helps James at all. Um,
Unless Sidney
Tex-
Brown's like ready to go, right?
well, no, Sydney's out for 4 games because he's got to miss
Right.
four
So they already
games.
put him on, so they can't even elevate him until 4 games.
Yeah, at the 5th game. So, and they have the early bye week, I think. So it'll be week 6, I think. But I have to double check that. But
Yeah,
he
right.
has to miss 4 games.
It will be week 6 because that bye week is week 5. So if he misses
Yeah.
the first 4, yep, he'd be back for week 6, game 5.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how it helps anybody. And I texted James. He hasn't texted back, understandably. It's tough to word. Hey, is this a fake injury? Which I did not do, but I think he's hurt. Because I don't know how it helps the Eagles to do this
Right.
other
Like
than
you can't trade him now, right?
yeah, nobody's trading for an injured player. So look, I think Howie went too far on this one. I mean, he should have been gone. He shouldn't. The
Yeah,
Eagles obviously don't want him to play.
I know.
Um, They should have cut ties. But
it is interesting though, because the minute it happened, I'm like, oh, fake injury. I don't want to say
well,
fake, but not fake. Yeah, fudged. Like
similar to Anaya Smith. Yeah, maybe fudged is a better word.
yeah, but
Like,
then you bring up the point, like, how does that help the Eagles at all? It'd be one thing if they could just like keep open the roster spot and then look to move Bradbury. Nobody's gonna trade for a guy on
yeah,
IR.
exactly.
So it's like
Exactly.
I don't see how this even helps. Maybe it's not fudged. I'm not sure.
Yeah, so from that perspective, I'm leaning towards it being a real injury for but because it doesn't help the Eagles in their goal to trade him. So could be wrong. I get why people go the other direction. That's the immediate thought. Because remember, when he showed up for minicamp, he got hurt right away. And the thought was, oh, well, they don't want him to get injured in practice. And here we are. And perhaps he got injured in practice. I'm not going to sit here and say 100% they're not budging. But I don't, if someone can give me an alternative theory of how it helps the Eagles move from James Bradbury and get something from James Bradbury, I'm all ears because I can't figure out how it helps the Eagles to budge this particular injury other than to get a roster spot for Green Bay.
Yeah, other than that, the ship has sailed on them thinking they're going to be able to trade him. Do they not want to cut him at that point? I don't know. Why would you not want to cut him? And maybe they just wanted the roster spot. I guess that's a somewhat plausible explanation of how he doesn't believe.
I guess. I mean, Oren Burks got the spot. He's a good special teams player. They lost some good special teams player. Josh Jobe was their best special teams player. He's gone. He signed with Seattle's practice squad, so they were unable to get him back on the practice squad. Maybe they just wanted to bolster special teams. Then just cut the guy.
Right.
His money's guaranteed anyway. You're paying him anyway. You're not doing a service for a good guy, and you're kind of screwing him from that perspective. And it's 6 to 8 weeks. That's not an injury you can fudge. Maybe you can fudge like Anaya Smith with the ankle injury. Maybe you could fudge for a couple weeks. But it is more difficult. I think people don't realize back in the old days, you used to be able to stash whoever you wanted, come up with something. Now you have to have medical documentation. And again, these are football players. In theory, you put anybody through an MRI, you're going to find something. There's going to be some kind of tendonitis, and you go, oh, he's got tendonitis. Right. You can fudge things that way, but 6 to 8 weeks, that's pretty long term. I don't see how it helps other than that little narrow window. Oh, you got a special teams player for Green Bay. And how many linebackers are you going to dress against Green Bay? I mean, you got to dress White. You got to dress Bond. You got to dress N'Kobe. I think Jeremiah Trotter Jr. is going to be the odd man out because Van Sumeren and Burks are the better special teams players. Yeah. And Brett Toth is back. We should mention that as well. So now you have 3 backup centers. I don't know if any of them can play, but you have 3 backup centers.
Yeah, so we'll see what ends up happening here with everything. I want to go to this question, John, before the break. I think it's a fair question on Bradbury. We've kind of tried to answer it for months now. I don't know if we'll be able to answer it now, but we'll give our best attempt. Isaiah Fair, good morning, Isaiah. Thank you for being here, brother. Make sure you guys hit that like button if you're enjoying the show. Just a week away, everybody. A week away from the game. You got to hit that like button this morning. Good crowd in here today. Isaiah says, can you guys explain why they didn't just use a post-June 1st release on Bradbury and spread the cap hit? I just don't get why he is here. John, do we have any inclination on what?
Yeah, they don't want to cut him. Yeah, I mean, they don't want to cut him. They want something back. They think there's value. Of course, they could have cut him. They should have cut him. But they refuse to give up and say, everybody took Howie's bluff.
Right.
And he was assuming that he'd keep him. Somebody would give him something for him. And the other teams were like, well, wait, you have to cut him. Well, wait. And the initial 53 came down, and Howie's like, all right, I'll play your game of chicken. I'm going to keep him. And the Eagles are still trying to trade him. We're still trying to trade him after that cut. And the thought there is obviously, all right, people know I'm serious now. Maybe he'll get an offer. And now, bang, he's hurt. So why didn't they cut him post June 1st? Of course, they could have cut him. They're paying him anyway. They could have just sucked up the dead money. Jeffrey Lurie is willing to do that. The answer is simple. Howie didn't want to get rid of him because he thinks he has value. And sometimes ego is a part of it with GMs. And he didn't want to give up something for nothing.
So you lose James Bradbury now for 6 to 8 weeks. Who are the safeties left, John? You got C.J. Gardner-Johnson. You got Reed. You got Avonte Maddox, I guess, who really is more of a corner, but I guess he's a safety.
No, he's a safety now, and Tristan McMullen is the fourth. So they went heavy at safety anyway. So they don't have a problem from a bodies perspective. And Cindy will be back, as we said, after the first 4 games. So he's coming down the road. They also got Caden Stearns back on the practice squad. He's not healthy, so we have to see when he is healthy and ready to go. But it's clear Vic Fangio likes that player. So they have some help at safety coming down the road. It's just not going to be immediate.
Good stuff, Johnny Mac. Let's get to our commercial break. Coming up on the other side, everybody, we got some commentary on Jalen Hurts and his comments on Jason Kelce, which I thought were a little interesting. We'll get into that. We'll get into the Sao Paulo, Brazil. There's a lot of stuff going on in Sao Paulo, John. Is this game at risk? I don't know. I was reading some articles yesterday. So we'll talk about that. And then in hour number 2, we'll have Ed Kratz. So we have a great rest of the show planned. Thanks, everybody, for being here this morning. Got a good crowd in here. Hit that like button, and we're going to get to our first commercial break. Before I do that, I'm going to tell you guys about our newest sponsor to JAKIB Sports. Very proud to have them. BetUS, as you see there on the screen, their big logo. And you can also look at the link to join them is in the description below. So when I'm giving you the information, the link is right down below in that description of the video. Are you guys looking for a new sports book this football season? BetUS is the answer, and JAKIB Sports is proud to announce our new partnership for the upcoming season. Right now, everybody receive a 125% sign-up bonus up to $2,000 on your first 3 deposits. So a pretty incredible bonus there to go and put some money in, get started with betting this football season. We're going to be doing some stuff with the Saquon Barkley jersey giveaway as all of our members. I see we have plenty of our members in here. We'll be doing that all year long on BetUS. So join today, receive that sign-up bonus. It's good, really good sign-up bonus right now. So if it's good for former Birds quarterback Michael Vick, it's definitely good for JAKIB Sports. BetUS has the fastest payouts in the industry, everybody. Live wagering on all major games and 24/7 personalized customer service, and get 10% back on your net losses twice a year. So go to betus.com.pa. That's betus.com.pa, or hit that link in the description to give JAKIB Sports credit for sending you guys over there. So thanks to BetUS. We'll be back in 3 minutes on the other side here on Birds 365.
Michael Vick at betus.com. Catch an incredible 125% sign-up bonus on your first 3 deposits, plus 10% gambler's insurance. BetUS, my online sports book and casino.
If you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.